Oh, you. You're no hollow, Thank goodness. I'm done for, I'm afraid. I'll die soon, then lose my sanity. You and I, we're both undead. Hear me out, will you?
Hey there, my name is Alex, I am the Silvermont, and in this video we're going to discuss a character from the first Dark Souls, one who mirrors our nameless, chosen undead. And that's not just flowery language. At one point he would mirror our actions, opposing us at the very end. In the credits he is referred to as simply Knight of the Undead Asylum. It is only through unused content that we know his name, Oscar of Astora, the one who frees us from our cell and imparts onto us the prophecy of the undead. In a way he was our herald, the Dark Lord's portent, the chosen undead's harbinger. Well, should we stick to the purely canon, then his role is extremely limited. He discovers us rotting in our cell and throws us the key, facilitating our escape. Why? Was he too a prisoner that broke free? Or did he come to this place specifically to free the undead? In his own words,
There is an old saying in my family, "Thou who art undead art chosen, and thine exodus from the Undead Asylum maketh pilgrimage to the land of ancient lords. When thou ringeth the bell of awakening, the fate of the undead thou shalt know." Well, now you know, and I can die with hope in my heart.
His equipment would suggest to me that he was no prisoner, but instead he specifically came to the Undead Asylum. But why? I can see two reasons here. The first being simply to free anyone he found in the hopes of finding allies, or the chosen undead. Another option is that, according to the prophecy, the journey must begin at the asylum, or maybe he even thought passage to Lordran was only possible via the asylum, even though the majority of the NPCs we find do not appear to have come that way. My best guess would be he simply wished to follow the prophecy to the letter. After we escape our cell, we soon find him on the verge of death, collapsed on a pile of rubble. Considering the hole above him and where we first saw him, did he misstep and fall down? Possibly, although I like to think he was caught by the asylum demon that is likewise first spied surveying the ruins from above up on the roof, the beast catching Oscar with his hammer and clubbing him through the roof, mortally wounding him in the process. From here, Oscar seems to feel that hollowing is imminent, and hands us his Estus flask, along with the figurative torch of his mission. Perhaps once you die enough as an undead, you can tell, via some sort of sixth sense, that your next death will have you hollow. Once we return to the asylum later on, we find him hollowed and can put him down for good. That is about the extent of his role in the game, although in Dark Souls 3 we find an Oscar lookalike similarly resting against a broken Lord Vessel-esque item at the beginning of the game. His items suggest that he was a high-ranking knight from Astora, the wording superiors implying perhaps his family, seemingly having their own crest, was one of the most prominent, in comparison to, say, Solaire, who is a knight of Astora, but seems to be of more common stock. Now of course we don't know too much about knights in Dark Souls, from how they are made, to their vows, and the duties expected of them. But judging purely from their equipment, it would seem that Solaire was perhaps poor or more of a commoner, whereas Oscar was a noble, outfitted with the very best equipment that money can buy. After all, whereas Oscar's family has their own heraldic crest, Solaire has taken the sun as his symbol and drawn it himself, it would seem. Curiously, the heraldic symbol of Oscar's house is fire warding, to put it another way, protecting against fire. Is that supposed to be his family wish to take up the mantle of burning themselves as kindling? Or meaning they oppose the fire? Considering what we know of Astora, it wouldn't make too much sense that Oscar's family are opposed to the fire and the linking of it. How about the Black Knights and the doll? Things found on our return to the asylum. Were the Black Knights looking for us, or for Oscar? Was Oscar searching for the doll, seeking perhaps Priscilla and her life hunt ability? To glean anything more from Oscar, we have to look into cut content from the games, so keep that in mind. None of this takes place in the game. All of these ideas were scrapped for one reason or another. Maybe it will give us more of an understanding though, when it comes to our Knight of Astora. And we'll start with his name, that which we'll refer to him as, even if it's technically cut content. A European name and very popular in Sweden, Oscar can be broken up into two elements, os meaning dear in Irish, and kar meaning loving. So put them together and you have the dear loving one. Alternatively, you have a meaning that seems to stem more from the Old Norse asgeir, wherein you can break it up into as for God and gar for spear. In other words, divine spear, God's spear, the spear of God. Too bad he wasn't wielding a spear, one of my favourite weapons as it happens. But moving on from his name, let's see what else we can learn, as the name, wow, Divine Spear seems a very knightly name, especially for a Knight of Astora, following the way of White, the way of Lord Gwyn. But what else can we learn from Oscar's unused dialogue?
A pleasure to meet you. Sage Frampt has spoken to me about you. I am Oscar of Astora. I am told that you rang the Bell of Awakening and received the word of Frampt. That is a wonderful thing. We are all counting on you. I only wish that I had such a purpose. I am preparing to leave. I cannot just stay here. I must find my own purpose. I hope that we meet again somewhere. One day.
Originally, it seems once the player left the asylum, they would later encounter Oscar, perhaps at Firelink Shrine, wherein he remarks on having spoken to Frampt and seems unsure as to what he should do next. One option being that the player has taken the mantle of Chosen Undead, leaving Oscar in doubt. If the player is the Chosen Undead, what does that leave for him? And then next up, he would be located in the forest, where the two might pair up to fight their way through the forest hunters to the grave of Artorias.
Well, how long has it been? Glad to see you safe, but be careful. You must be the same as I, in search of the grave of Sir Artorias. This forest is the territory of a fierce band of thieves. They assault any and all who seek the graves. What if we were to join forces? How about that? If we work together, we may escape the bandits. Does that appeal to you? Very well. Let us keep our wits about us. One can always do with another pair of eyes.
Finally, we would meet him presumably by the kiln of the First Flame, either before or after Gwyn, where we might have had an encounter closer to the fight with Gale. Two undead on equal footing, both of them effectively nobodies, fighting a rather pointless battle at the ends of the world. Should the player side with Frampt, Oscar would have sided with Karth, and vice versa. That would have been the answer to his earlier question. If he wasn't to be the chosen undead, then Karth's truths or lies, whichever you believe them to be, would have convinced Oscar that he was the Dark Lord. I do enjoy the notions of these concepts, as it plays up the idea that both snakes are playing us in ways, and brings a nice circular theme to the game, and a personal touch to the ending as well, after the very impersonal battle with Gwyn. So why was it cut? I couldn't tell you, but perhaps it was for the best. Perhaps this Oscar quest would have been too on the nose, as is the current game's portrayal of Karth and Frampt is a little more subtle, if not entirely nuanced. We can see that Oscar was a man needing guidance, weak in a way. He followed the prophecies as best he could, but why? Because he was told it was fate? Because he must, to give him a sense of purpose in life? In a very basic sense, there are two kinds of human, those that follow and those that lead. Those that follow hesitate and doubt and need to be shown the way, to be guided along a path and told what awaits them at the end. Frampt and Karth filled that role for Oscar, promising him a salvation of sorts, whether it was Karth's seductions concerning the Dark Lord, or Frampt's grandeur in succeeding Lord Gwyn. The two different ending dialogues make it plain how flimsy are Oscar's convictions. A leader would know the path they must take and follow it through to the end, laying down the foundations of that road for future generations, those who follow.
I have waited for thee, foolish slave of the gods, and pawn of Frampt. I will kill you and become the true Dark Lord.